Live and we're ready.
Okay. Conneaut City Council for June 8th, 2020 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present.
Mr. Emery,
Here.
Mr. Goff,
Here.
Mr. Kozeski,
Here.
Mrs. Ledford,
Here.
McBoy,
Here.
Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday,
Present.
Finance Director, Mr. Williams,
Here.
and Assistant Law Director, Mr. Newton.
Here.
Hey, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, move on to approval of the meeting minutes for May 26th. Are there any alterations or corrections? There was one correction in the minutes, said May 11. At least in the copy I have.
It's been corrected.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve minutes.
Motion by Mr. Emery, is there a second?
Second.
I second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Kozeski?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, meeting minutes for May 26th has been approved. We have no presentations tonight. Do we have any citizen comments?
We're getting a lot of feedback from John. Is it John's?
No, I'm alone now, so. Everybody might want to check your mics, maybe. Does anybody have any citizen comments? Okay, hearing none, any communications?
Yes, I have 3 this evening. Traffic regulation number 304, parking east side of Broad Street. There shall be no parking on the east side of Broad Street from Jackson Street to Park Avenue from April 1st to November 1st to allow for a bicycle lane. Traffic regulation number 305, parking east side of Broad Street. There shall be no parking on the east side of Broad Street from Park Avenue to Marina Drive. And traffic regulation number 306, parking west side of Broad Street. There shall be 2-hour parking on the west side of Broad Street from Marina Drive to Naylor Drive. That is all.
Okay, does council have any communications? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to reports of our administration, beginning with City Manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. A couple of different things that I want to bring to your attention. One is for your consideration tonight. The sanitary sewer cleaning and televising appears in your agenda. It is ordinance number 4120. I've included in my report the apparent bid tabulation. I'm waiting on the formal letter of recommendation from CT Consultants. This is not a company we've worked with before. Their bid does appear in line with many of the other bids that we received. So they wanted to do some reference checking, and we're pending that letter. So for tonight's ordinance 4120, if we can just place that in a second reading until we've had an opportunity to complete the reference checks, we can move forward with that at our next meeting. The only other ordinance I really want to bring to your attention is there is a resolution for the coronavirus relief distribution. This came to us a little late on Friday evening. It is a requirement to receive the funding. I think we got it at about 8 or 9 p.m. on Friday. So I had the law office just go ahead and complete the required ordinance or resolution, excuse me. And I believe we have to file that by the 15th of this month. So it just so happened we were having a council meeting tonight, so I figured I'd go ahead and put it on there. I believe John Williams forwarded in an email from the county auditor, David Thomas, earlier today with summaries of that, as well as an explanation of the process and eligible categories for uses of those funds. I would urge you to go through and peruse those. You're kind of looking at them in real time because we're receiving them at the same time you are. So we're going to be coming through those. Obviously, it covers a wide variety of expenses. I'd ask that we go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we're going to have to schedule a special meeting. And I don't think we need to do that. I think we need to accept any relief funding that's aimed at cities. And this comes from the Federal CARES Act, so it does have to comply with that. So again, that's the resolution 45-20 on your ordinance. The only other thing that I would share with you tonight is we have 3 ordinances related to an ESID or PACE, which is Property Access to Clean Energy. This is a newer type of funding. It's not brand new. It's been around the state of Ohio for about 5 years. But Property Access Clean Energy allows property owners to do energy efficiency improvements on their buildings, including roofs, electrical, windows, HVAC, and any other things that will improve the energy efficiency of buildings, either new construction or rehab. We have Ryan Tatry on, who's the director of the Human Resource Center here in Conneaut, and I'm proud to hold them up as the very first PACE project in Ashtabula County. So I think if Ryan would comment before the first ordinance, I appreciate his efforts. I know it hasn't been a simple process. It's new to all of us. So thank you for that. And we're looking forward to this. So those are the first 3 ordinances on tonight's agenda. Kind of in other news, we have the letter of recommendation for the Chestnut and Middle Street roadway improvements. We received those bids. We opened those bids last Friday. The apparent low bidder is acceptable. It is Koski Construction. However, right now, at the moment, we are waiting on the state of Ohio to reauthorize a capital bill. This would be carryover or partially expended or unexpended Ohio Public Works Commission funding that has already been awarded to the city via grant agreement. And we're just waiting for it to be reappropriated from this fiscal year ending at the end of June into the new fiscal year, which starts July 1 coming up here. So far, the state legislature, specifically the House, has not taken action on it. And it's not clear what the timing of it will be. However, I would not recommend at this time that we authorize a contract on OPWC funds unless it's clear that within our fiscal year 2020, we will receive reimbursement. So we kind of have them on a hold pattern. I did not put that on the agenda tonight, though if it is approved, you will see it on our next agenda. The only other thing that I would mention about that is Chestnut Street, as you know, is in front of an elementary school. Our goal early on, and I think we would have been spot on in terms of timing and getting it out to bid and ready to move forward, if we were able to move forward, may be hampered. So if the state legislature does authorize this funding and reappropriates it, and we move forward to our next meeting, we'll be very tight on a construction timeline. We've kind of been dragging our feet waiting to see if OPWC was going to be reauthorized or not, and we just continue to hold in that pattern. So I wanted to give you that update. The only other major reminder I have for you, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions on my written report, is that we have a special public meeting for the National League of Cities Service Line Insurance Program for Monday, June 22nd at 2020. That's at 6 p.m. It will be streamed live. The presenter is joining via Zoom, though we may be in person. I'm not quite sure how we'll do that, but we'll figure it out between now and then. It will also be streamed on the public access channel. And Ashley with the National League of Cities will present a series of options for sewer lines, water lines, and I believe a rider for internal plumbing within people's households that they can buy an insurance program that if you have a catastrophic failure of those items, which can be quite expensive if your water line breaks or your sewer line breaks, particularly in some of our roadways around Conneaut, where there's quite a bit of depth. I mean, it's not been uncommon to see a sewer lateral replacement project go up to $15,000 among homeowners. So it's significant. This is just a public meeting. Anybody from the audience, council members, ask questions and get all their questions answered and see if this is something the city would like to participate in. Obviously, there's a cost to residents who would join by fee, and it would be administered through the city. So just a way for homeowners to protect themselves, if they don't have homeowners coverage for things like water lines and sewer lines, particularly on some of the major thoroughfares. So that meeting again, that Monday, June 22nd at 6 p.m. Other things in the report, I'm happy to take any questions any council members may have.
So I have one thing, Mr. Hockaday, can you give an update on the Lake Road stormwater project?
Yes. So on the south side of the road, from the new outfall location, which is the stormwater culvert that passes under Lake Road, that line is complete and installed all the way to in front of the Anderson property. We will need to do a road crossing there in front of the Amy property. There are two catch basins on either side of the Amy driveway that are included in this project. That is probably going to be scheduled in the next couple of weeks here. Lake Road, Route 531 will be closed for approximately 1 day. We have a maintenance and traffic plan that we received from the contractor. We're just waiting on final scheduling, which we'll know at least a week in advance, and there will be signs where we will have to close that segment of Lake Road. It is simply too narrow to trench half and then do the other half. It'd just be too risky. So we're going to close it for a day. They will cut, install the new line, and then repair the road and put it back into service, hopefully the subsequent day. once we are there, we are probably about 75% complete on that project. And most of the other work will actually be on the north side of the Amy property, removing the old municipal line that ran across easement down that driveway, grouting it in, and then replacing the portion that goes over the hill. And then once that is completed and all the stormwater runs to the east instead of north across the Amy property, that right of way, that easement will be removed from the Amy property, and it'll no longer have any public water going across it. So really the holdup has been on some discussion with the Amy's on some of the process that is going to happen down over the hill. So we think we have all of that ironed out, and it should be moving forward here. There is also, I believe, one change order. It is in the budget amendment section that includes a change order, which we discussed at the work session regarding an additional line that wasn't picked up by the camera work that we did. It was about $12,000 off the top of my head that we need to do in order to make sure that the line that we found is properly integrated into the project. So that is a recommended change order that CT has approved. We just need council to authorize the addition to the contract. As discussed, we are still within the overall budget of the project. That was I believe the final project's construction value was about $210,000, and the bid price was $196,000. So we had room to accommodate the change order in the project without going over budget.
Okay. Any other questions for the city manager?
Mr. Hockaday, Mr. Hockaday, I have a question.
Mhm.
The center lane markings on Route 20 east of Parish Road, I guess going east and west, 20 in Parish.
Mhm.
The markings are difficult to see, if not non-existent. Do we know when they're going to repave, or not repave, but restripe those markings? And also
So-
center lane, the center turn lane?
Yeah, so Traftech, who is the contractor for Trimore, has been notified that they need to get back out there and finish that, that it's within its warranty period. I do not have a final schedule on that. I know they were notified a couple weeks ago. I'll have to check with Chris DeLuca and get back with you on what their final schedule, if it's been resolved, what that is, but the contractor is responsible for it. And it is still within the warranty period and insurance period for Trimore.
That's the double yellow and the center turn lane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you volume wise.
That's for the center turn lane and also the double yellow, correct?
Yes, all of the striping.
Okay.
Mr. Hockaday, does that include the lane markings as well at the actual intersection of Parish and West Main, or is that the city's responsibility?
No, so all of the striping in the project area is the responsibility of the contractor.
Okay. All right, very good. Any other questions for the city manager? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the finance director, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. I did distribute some reports to council as far as some major revenue sources and the impact that this COVID has had on collections. If you look at the income tax comparison, and I believe I went over this briefly at our last meeting, I indicated that we've experienced a decrease of almost 20% in income tax collections for April and May. The first quarter, we actually did pretty well. We were up about 3% for the year, but it has since declined. We've collected about 35% of our estimate. Our estimate for this year was $3.214 million. But I'd like to call your attention to the bottom part of that page. And what I've done there is I've broken down the collections by business, individual, and withholding. And I've also listed the number of accounts that have filed in each year. So if you look at 19, at this point in 19, we had about 4,500 accounts, for almost 4,600. This year it's 3,792. If you look at the decreases for business, business collections are down about 85,000 or about 62%. Individual is down about 51% or about 200,000 from last year. But withholding, which accounts for about 75% of the city's collections, is actually down only 0.3%. So that's somewhat good news in that the withholding has not really diminished that much. It's the individual. If you look at the accounts, we had 2,206 that had filed last year at this time. And this year we only have 1,069. So I think part of it is the reason for that decrease is that these people have not filed yet. Since we did extend that deadline until July of this year, it looks like about half of the people didn't file and about half did by April 15th. So I think you're seeing part of that decrease because of the non-filing. Now we'll of course monitor this closely, but I think that's part of the reason. I actually was hopeful that withholding did decrease that much, and it actually hasn't. So that is some good news. That's a little bit of a bright spot in the income tax collections. If you look at the next page, local government, we were actually seeing an increase the first 4 months out of the year. Year-to-date increases between 16 and 19%, all the way actually up to 20%. And then in May, we experienced a 28% decrease. But for the year, we're still up about 5% for local government. Now, I sent you an email or forwarded an email from Dave Thomas, the county auditor. He's indicated that the June collections are going to be down about 26%. So we'll have to factor that into our revenue estimates. Hopefully this doesn't continue that long. I think we're starting to see a bit of a resurgence in the economy. So hopefully collections will rebound here. But for right now, that's what we're anticipating for June, is about a 26% decrease. Gas tax is a little more difficult because we're comparing this year's collections with last year's collections. In the first half of the year of last year, we did not have that 10.5 cent increase in gas tax. So gas tax, even though more recently the collections have declined about 20%, if you compare them to last year, we're actually seeing a year-to-date increase of 56.75%. So that's even when factoring in the more recent decreases, we're still increased by over 50% from last year. So that's a little piece of good news as well. The next page, the auto license and auto permissive, we don't collect as much from them. With the gas tax last year, we were about 469,000. This year, we're anticipating over 600,000 in gas tax. Auto license and auto permissive collect about 75,000 and 135,000 respectively. But we did see a significant decrease in auto license. There's a decrease of about 16% in May, year-to-date difference, which equated to about a $5,000 decrease. And auto permissive was a decrease of 16% or about $9,000. So even though the increases are somewhat significant, they're smaller revenue sources for the Public Works Department. But as far as income tax goes, about 75% of all of the income tax collected is receipted into the general fund. About 18% is receipted into the street department. So if we factor in both the income tax decrease, the local, or not the local government, but the gas tax, auto license, and auto permissive, there's still a net $21,000 ahead of last year. at this time. So that's just a brief overview of some of the revenue sources. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Williams?
I have one quick question, President Arcaro. John, now you can't project though that we're going to stay ahead of this in case we have another shutdown in the fall with the COVID.
No, that's a game changer there.
Okay.
If that happened.
Okay. So we don't have any, how much do we have like in like a rainy day fund, let's just say, in case something were to happen? Because I know other cities were looking at major cuts payroll wise due to having the shutdown. What does that, do you have a projection of what the possibility may be on that?
You know, our reserve, if you count some of the chargebacks to the levies, we're still about a little over 10% carryover. I know it didn't quite look like that on the report, the last report that I gave council.
Yeah,
It's about a $283,000 fund balance.
Okay.
But there are some back charges to the levies that will increase that fund balance. But I do those over a period of months based upon cost and revenues that are receipted in. So I think we have a bit of a buffer. The enterprise funds are doing very well. I mean, water and sewer both have well over a 20% carryover. So there's no concern there. The Public Works Department has always been just about a break-even fund. And right now they're in the negative significantly, but we're anticipating some SIB loan proceeds and some other grant funding to be receipted in here shortly. So I'm basically monitoring the estimated revenue according to and comparing that to actual collections, and then comparing that to our appropriations and our expenditures. So right now, I think we're still okay. Well, like I said, I'm monitoring this on a weekly and monthly basis, and I will let you know of any concerns that I have. But right now, I just don't see this as an issue as some other cities have had at this point. Now, if that trend continues, where we continue to see a decrease in income tax collections and local government continues to decline, you know, obviously things could change, you know, quickly. But at this point, I just don't see any, you know, furloughs or layoffs in the very near future.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the finance director? If not, we'll move on to the law director, Mr. Newcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. Since I've seen you guys last, we're pretty much back in person, full time with the court. Everything's very busy and things are progressing nicely, I think, with the cooperation of all the city offices. I have nothing on the agenda tonight that requires a report. I don't think you otherwise have already been briefed on. But things seem to be going pretty well in the law office at this point. And let me know if you need anything else on my end. Thanks.
Okay. Any questions for the law director? Okay, if not, we'll move on to reports of any committees.
I believe this is the time. The Growing Together Garden Club and myself have weeded the islands at the municipal parking lot. I would like to thank the ladies for helping. And I would like to have a Parks and Rec meeting, and we've set it up for the 15th at 5 p.m. at Malik Park, and then we'll come to the special meeting. Any questions?
Those beds do look good on Main Street.
They worked hard.
Anybody else have a committee report? If not, liaison reports. Okay, no liaison reports. We'll move on to our ordinances and resolutions this evening, and we have 10 in first reading, so buckle up. And we will begin with Resolution 36-20.
A resolution approving a petition for special assessments for special energy improvement projects under Ohio Revised Code Chapter 1710 and approve the necessity of acquiring, installing, equipping, and approving certain public improvements in the city of Conneaut, Ohio, in cooperation with the Conneaut Energy Special Improvement District.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday, is this where you want Mr. Tatry to speak, or?
Yes.
Okay,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Tatry, welcome.
Thank you, President Arcaro. I just wanted to kind of give my a little bit of input. This has been a very long process. We've actually had the roof done last September, and we're it's going backwards a little bit, but the company that did the roof was able to squeeze it in before we had everything secured. But we are very excited about being a part of the first business to be able to go through this process, and hopefully it'll open the doors for a lot of other businesses to take advantage of these programs. And on behalf of the board of directors here at the Resource Center, we appreciate all that City Council and Mr. Hockaday have done for us to get all this stuff done. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Tatry? The NOPEC representative on?
They weren't able to join us tonight, but the only thing I would add, President Arcaro, is this is the first resolution. There are two subsequent ordinances, Ordinance 3720 and 3820, that are all related to the same. And I appreciate Mr. Tatry's work on this. I know it hasn't been as clean cut as we would always hope, but you know, we're ending up in the right place. So
Somebody's got to go first.
somebody does. So thank you for being the first.
And now he'll be able to help others.
And I think
Brian,
that's
why
it.
don't you, or Mr. Tatry, why don't you tell them what happened to the building? What improvements were made?
So before I became the director here at the center, I was on the board, and we were faced every year having to do repairs to an aging roof. The Resource Center has been around for almost 40 years, and we have struggled with this building, always having to make repairs upon the roof. And the board decided that when we were presented with this opportunity, hopefully the roof is long going to outlive my career as director of the center. So I won't have to worry about whether or not the roof is leaking or having any of those problems. So we literally did the entire roof, and you know, we've had a pretty rainy winter and spring, and it has held up tremendously and no leaks. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Very good.
I think it's also a good thing to reiterate that Conneaut is the first city or municipality, for that matter, in Asheville County to move forward with a project such as this. So,
Right.
so good job on behalf of Mr. Hockaday and the Human Resources Center. Any other comments or questions regarding the resolution? If not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
Mr. Arcaro, I'd like to make a motion to declare resolution 3620 an emergency.
I think we just need to suspend the
No.
rules.
Yeah, no need for the emergency, Mr. Moiseo, because it's just a resolution, so
Just suspend the 3 reading rule.
Yes,
that'd be fine, yes.
Okay. Then, Mr. Arcaro, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on resolution 3620.
okay, there's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on resolution 36-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. McVoy.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski. Mr. Kozowski.
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Ledford.
Chris, I have a question for you. I know I need to abstain from the vote, but can I vote on suspending the 3 reading rule?
I usually suggest an abstention on both, but it really doesn't make a difference as long as you don't vote on the action. That's fine, Mrs. Ledford. So you can go ahead and vote on the suspension if you want.
Okay. Yes.
And Mr. Moisia.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Tammy, or I mean Cam, you didn't ask me.
Oh, my apologies, Mrs. McFoy.
Yes.
Okay, now, Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on resolution 3620.
It's a motion to act on resolution 36-20. Is there a second?
I
I'll
second.
second.
Second by Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
I abstain.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
Yes.
Resolution 36-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 37-20.
An ordinance determining to proceed with the acquisition, installation, equipment, and improvement of certain public improvements in the city of Conneaut, Ohio, in cooperation with the Conneaut Energy Special Improvement District.
Okay, this is, again, we discussed this and had comments on that. Are there any additional questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed on ordinance 37-20.
Make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 3720.
Okay, there's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 37-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. McCoy.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 37-20.
So motion to act on ordinance 37-20. Is there a second?
I
Second.
second.
Second by Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
I abstain.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 37-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 38-20.
An ordinance levying special assessment for the purpose of acquiring, installing, equipping, and improving certain public improvements in the city of Conneaut, Ohio, in cooperation with the Conneaut Energy Special Improvement District, and authorizing an energy project cooperative agreement and a special assessment agreement.
Okay, again, any additional questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed with ordinance 38-20.
I motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 38-20.
So motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 38-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
yes,
And Mr. Emery, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I motion to act on ordinance 38-20.
The motion to act on ordinance 38-20, is there a second?
second,
Second by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
I abstain,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
yes,
Okay, ordinance 38-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 39
An ordinance to adopt a tentative budget for the year 2021, attached here to marked Exhibit A and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, President Arcaro. We do this every year. We have to adopt a tax budget and present it to the county. It's an estimate, a preliminary estimate of revenues and expenditures for 2021. The schedule is we have to pass an ordinance setting a publication or a public hearing date. We're required to publish it not less than 10 days in advance of the hearing date by statute. The preliminary budget has to be on file in the finance office, and it must be at least 10 days before adoption by council. The hearing date will be June 24th, 2020 at noon in the council chambers. After that, the tax budget will be presented to the council at a work session on July 6th. On July 13th, council will adopt the tax budget at a regular meeting. It's required on or before July 15th by statute. And then shortly after that, we have to submit the budget to the county auditor, and that is required on or before July 20th by statute.
Okay, any questions for the finance director? If not, entertain a motion to proceed on ordinance 39-20.
Mr. Arcaro, I'll make a motion to declare ordinance 39-20 an emergency.
The motion to declare ordinance 39-20 an emergency, is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
And Mr. Mosio, the emergency has been declared.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 39-20.
There's a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 39-20. Is there a second?
I second,
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
Okay, Mr. Mosio, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 39-20.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 39-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford, Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
Yes,
Ordinance 39-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 40-.
Fiscal Officer Certificate to the Council of the City of Conneaut, Ohio. As Fiscal Officer of the City of Conneaut, I certify in connection with your proposed issue of $40,000 notes to be issued in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of improving the city's Center Road Bridge, together with all related costs and necessary appurtenances that: one, the estimated life or period of usefulness of the improvement is at least 5 years. Two, the estimated maximum maturity of the bonds calculated in accordance with section 133.20 of the revised code is 20 years. Three, the earliest maximum maturity of the notes is September 17, 2035, being 20 years from the date of the earliest issue of notes issued for this purpose. Dated June 8, 2020, John Wayne, Director of Finance. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of $40,000 notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of improving the city's Center Road Bridge, together with all related costs and necessary appurtenances, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, who wants to speak on this?
I'll speak on it. This was originally a $150,000 note. It was issued in September of 2015. It was for the Center Road Bridge repair. We have paid a significant portion down of that note. We'll be paying an additional $60,000 this year. We'll reissue for 40, so that represents a $20,000 principal reduction. The original note was issued at 2.99% with about $1,794 in interest. We will reissue this at 2.64%. Anticipated interest or projected interest is about $1,056. I had planned on paying this note down this year, but in light of everything that's been going on, I think that we'll probably need that additional $40,000 in the general fund. So this probably will be the last year of issuance, though. Hopefully we'll pay this note off next year. It's getting so small that it's to the point where it's really not financially advantageous to issue a note below that amount. So we will be paying it off next year in its entirety.
Okay. All right, it appears that our numbers are out of order. Am I seeing this correct? 43-20 is what I'm seeing for this.
40-20 is next. We
Right.
just jumped. We just jumped.
Right, we were on 40-20, but we went to 43, so.
Oh, my apologies.
So we will just go ahead with 43.
43, my apologies. They got clipped together in accident.
Yes, okay. So with that, is there a motion to proceed with ordinance 43-20?
I motion to declare ordinance 43-20 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 43-20 emergency. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by, I didn't catch who it was.
I didn't catch it either.
It was either Jamie or I.
Mrs.
Both Angel and
McCoy.
I talked at the same time, so.
Okay, Mrs. McCoy, second.
Okay. Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
yes,
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes,
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
Hey, Mr. Emery, the emergency has been declared.
I would like to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 43-20.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 43-20. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Emery, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I would like to act on ordinance 43-20.
The motion to act on ordinance 43-20, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 43-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 40-20.
My apologies for that. An ordinance to authorize payment to the following contractors in the amounts listed in section 1 below pursuant to section 5705.41D1 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
We discussed this at work session. These were a variety of projects in which we had to execute some change orders in order to complete the projects the way they should be done. One included some additional work that was at Parish and Chamberlain for some water line that had to be relocated. The Lake Road storm sewer, the change order I mentioned earlier, is included in this ordinance. The contractual change in the amount of CA and CO on the Parish and Chamberlain Road repair, including that water line adjustment to CT for the additional construction observations included in there. And John, help me out. I'm forgetting the fourth one off the top of my head, and I have so many screens open for the Zoom meeting. What was the fourth one?
There was Trimore, FurPal, Severino,
FurPal.
and CT Consultants. Yeah.
So FurPal was the I-90 and Mill Street waterline lining project at the request of our water superintendent, Richard Neubauer, who requested the setting of 2 extra valves that should have been placed. We had to make an adjustment there. The city also took some items off, and I believe that total change order on that element was approximately $5,000 increase. So those are the 4 change orders in this ordinance.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Hockaday or Mr. Williams? If not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Arcaro, to declare ordinance 40-20 an emergency.
So motion to declare ordinance 40-20 an emergency. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Movio, the emergency has been declared.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 40-20.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 40-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 40-20.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 40-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Ordinance 40-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 41-20.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to award the bid and enter into contract with C&K Industrial Services, Inc. for the sewer interceptor cleaning project at the bid price of $63,030 and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. As I mentioned during my administrative report, I would recommend you move this to second reading. I included the informal bid tabulation in my report to council. We are still waiting on CT consultants to complete their due diligence on this contractors. They're not someone we've worked with before. Once those reference checks are completed, they will have a letter recommending an award. So for the time being, if we could just move this to a second reading pending that due diligence. We did open this late Friday, so they're still working on it.
Okay. Is there a motion to move this to second reading?
I make a motion to move ordinance 41-20 to second reading.
Thank you, Mrs. McVoy. Move on to ordinance 42-20.
An ordinance to transfer a total of $35,000 from 101-901-59300 transfers within the general fund to the police and fire pension funds in the amount listed in section 1.
Mr. Williams.
Yes, this is an ordinance that is basically just transferring cash to the police and fire levy funds. Council approved the actual appropriation of $40,000 transfer to the police and $32,000 to fire in anticipation of the needs of that of both of those funds. We're transferring about half of the $40,000 to the police that was budgeted to the police pension, and a little less than half that was budgeted for the fire pension. They had $32,000 budgeted. So even though it's been appropriated, council still has to approve the actual transfer of cash to support these funds. Now, the funds we will need the funds in June. In July, we'll receive the settlement, and the settlement should be sufficient until probably around November, and then we'll probably transfer the balance of the remaining amounts in December of this year.
Any questions for the finance director? Now I'll entertain a motion to proceed on ordinance 42-20.
I have a question. For ordinance 42-20, do we need to declare it an emergency?
No.
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 Just suspend the three reading.
Okay.
That's correct.
Well,
That's
I'll
correct.
make a motion. I'm sorry.
That's correct, Mrs. Ledford. You're right.
I make a motion to suspend the three reading rule for ordinance 42-20.
There's a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 42-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. McCoy.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
thank you, Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Ledford, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I make a motion to act on ordinance 42-20.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 42-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 42-20 has passed. Move on to ordinance 43-20. Oh,
Oh, we already did that.
we'll move on to ordinance 44-20.
an ordinance regulating access to Conneaut City Hall and not declaring it an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
Okay, as we work towards kind of reopening City Hall, this is the set forth some of the rules and ways that we would reopen City Hall. I hope everybody's had a chance to review this and take a look at it in depth. Happy to answer any questions anybody has, but I want everybody to specifically note that I believe it is 30 days after the passage.
Correct. Are you still there, Mr. Hockaday?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we discussed this at
Work session.
the work session. So do you want to move this ahead, or do you want it to go to second reading? Because it will take 30 days because it's not an emergency for this to go into effect.
Correct. So I just want to make sure I'm okay with that. I think 30 days. If something were to happen within that time period after council has moved this forward, you can always change it again. I think we need to move in that direction, and it's really whatever council's comfortable with. If they want to put it in a reading and just understand it'll be 30 days from the subsequent council meeting. So the subsequent council meeting would be the 22nd, so it wouldn't take effect until July 22nd. I would also note for the record, council meetings have never been excluded from the public. It has still been open to the public this entire time. Obviously, we've encouraged online participation. I am happy to note we have 4 attendees online here tonight that are listening and watching this feed that I can see here in the Zoom meeting. So people are still watching. Obviously, it's still on the public access channel. We've always made an effort to do the public's business in the public. I know there's a lot going on in the world today. I've been trying to keep council informed as to where we stand on the number of active cases and positive cases within the city of Conneaut. Obviously, our numbers continue to grow, largely based on congregate facilities, specifically the prison on our east side. This past week, they did some testing of prison staff. Obviously, the prison staff is a little bit more concerning than the prisoners because of the ability of them to community spread, to stop by at a grocery store or a gas station on their way home from work. They've had exposure risk that they could carry it. Of the approximate 213 employees at the prison, I believe 23 of those yielded positive results over this past week. Our case total as of today, according to Nichelle Blood, the executive director of our health department, is 92 cases. Most of those, the majority of those, are related to the prison on the east side. And of course, we have some folks that are related to the various nursing homes around the county that have seen infections. We could take a wait and see approach, or we could go ahead and move forward with this, and knowing that if there's a huge surge that comes forward after this, that we have the ability to extend this timeline if council wants to do that.
Okay, I'm of the opinion that we should move forward with the ordinance. Council, your thoughts?
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions or concerns with this ordinance? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I motion to
Mr. O'Carroll?
suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 44-20.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 44-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Mosey.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Emery, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I motion to act on ordinance 44-20.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 44-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosey.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Ordinance 44-20 is passed. Move on to resolution 45-20.
A resolution requesting the city of Conneaut share of funds from the county coronavirus relief distribution fund.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
This is the notice we received late Friday that this bill had finally cleared the Ohio House. This is the redistribution of the Federal CARES Act funding to the state of Ohio from the federal government. We do have to authorize a resolution requesting the proportionate share. From the preliminary information that I've seen produced by the Ohio Municipal League, we need to do that by June 15th. Obviously, time is of the essence. These funds, and I would again reiterate that all the information that we have related to these funds has been distributed to council earlier today to take a look at some of those acceptable uses, because they do range kind of far and wide. Everything from incurred expenditures for telecommunications, such as our teleconferencing software that we're using now, PPE, cleansing, but even small business loans that the city would issue would be an acceptable use. Obviously, that's not something we have an apparatus for, but I would tell you to delve deep into that. Obviously, I want to capture and reimburse our citizens for all the unanticipated expenditures that we've had to make this year. So for everything that's eligible, I think we need to authorize this resolution and see what we can recuperate.
Okay, any questions or comments on resolution 45-20? I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I'll make a
Anybody?
motion. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 40, or I'm sorry, resolution -45 or 45-20.
It's a resolution, so there's no need for an emergency, it's just 3 reading.
I made a motion to waive it. That would be okay?
Yeah.
Waive the 3 reading? Okay.
That's
Yes.
the motion. The motion is to suspend the 3 reading rule on resolution 45-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Mosio, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I would like to make a motion to act on resolution 45-20.
There's a motion to act on resolution 45-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Resolution 45-20 is passed. That completes our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. Now move on to unfinished and old business. Hearing none, move on to miscellaneous business. And hearing none of that. Okay, if there's nothing else to come before council, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Carroll, real
Yes.
quick. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Hockaday, and again, I know we brought this up earlier, but would they be able to, or would you be able to get from that company a timeline on those pavement or the lane markings on 20? Would you be able to give us some type of time period or time frame?
Yes, I will get you something immediately.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, anything else for miscellaneous business? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo. Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Okay, the council meeting for June 8th is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.